raise it by a year, every 2 years, until we get it up to the age 75. And eventually we phase it out.
Beautiful.
Anyway, that's sort of the plan. We start with the entitlement system. We systematically start dismantling every other piece. But we start with those programs that are most expensive, because expensive programs erode individual liberty faster than anything else. Faster, I believe, even than some of the things that we more commonly associate with individual liberties. Because economic liberty presupposes the ability to keep your own wealth, to not have it taken away from you. Every minute that I have to spend working for the government so I can pay my taxes is time that I can't spend reading Blackstone's commentaries on the laws. And that's upsetting to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that plan though will cause a lot of people to go to Washington with pitchforks because they don't want to lose their goodies.
Good.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on. I've got my own pitchfork and mine's bigger.
Hey, the 10th Amendment movements are really strong in the States right now, and I talked to a gentleman the other night as a law student that told me that ever since we started electing senators, that pretty well eroded the 10th Amendment. I had a gentleman that tell me that the civil rights and the state's ability not to secede from the Union really hurts the 10th Amendment. My question to you, how are you going to help Utah give back our 10th Amendment rights?
First of all, inherent in that question is inherent in the answer to that question is just, again, the same principle of reading the Constitution. If they would read it, we would get back to more of the same benefits that we had when we didn't elect them directly, because there's recognized state sovereignty. It's bad out there. It's happening. I hope they're not coming after me. I haven't done anything wrong.
I'm just trying to protect
All that
you.
heck word.
Right. I don't like the 17th Amendment. I wish we had never adopted it. 1913 was a bad year. It was the 16th Amendment, the 17th Amendment, and the Federal Reserve Act.
And World War I.
Yeah, well, it was Republicans that have done all sorts of bad things. Republicans gave us probably 5 of the worst Supreme Court justices we've ever had. Earl Warren, John Paul Stevens, Harry Blackmun, William Brennan, and David Souter, all Republican nominees. And Republicans also, gave us that amendment and did all sorts of other things that are bad. We have not been pure as the driven snow as a Republican Party. Anyway, 17th Amendment's bad. I don't think the political will exists to get rid of it. I am intrigued by an idea that somebody ran past me the other day. There are, I am told, in some state constitutions, including the state constitution of New Jersey, lingering powers that allow state legislatures to remove a sitting senator from office after a certain number of years. And it doesn't literally, those powers don't literally, at least under one interpretation, conflict with the 17th Amendment, because it's just a removal power. They don't have the election power, they just have a removal power. And so there's some litigation percolating through a lower court in New Jersey right now involving whether or not they can do that. That's an interesting one to watch. That would restore a lot of it if states could have the power to do that. I would love to see states everywhere just adopting their own state constitutional provisions saying, we may recall a sitting U.S. senator from service. We won't be able to elect them, because under the 17th Amendment, that right now belongs to the people, and we probably can't change that anytime soon because the political will doesn't exist to do it. But we can recall them, like a defective Ford Pinto.
Nice. Nice.
Yes, back here.
What would be your idea of the ideal tax to split this government? How would you change our current tax system?
Our current tax system is bad because of the fact that we've got, almost 50% of the population that pays nothing. 43.5%, I think, is the number. And then you've got the next few percentage points that pay very little. Then you've got 40% of American households that pay 95% of the bill. And so, if we were all here eating tonight, and if you, Chris, were paying the whole bill for everybody eating, we would probably order differently than if we were all paying our own bill, right?
Exactly.
Which is part of the problem. Our tax system has created a lot of the problem. So we've given an incentive for 60% of the population, which pays little or nothing into the system, to elect a slate of senators and representatives to Washington who will continue to expand the government, to continue to adopt
Socialism.
entitlement programs we can't afford, that are all socialist at heart. Because they know they're not gonna have to pay for it, because we're gonna make those other guys pay for it. When you make somebody else pay for it, bad things happen. He'll cheat without scruple, he'll gamble without fear, as Benjamin Franklin always said. The corollary to that in government is he'll spend without any wisdom, who can, without any expectation of having to pay for it. Taxes are unpleasant, they don't like to pay them, but they're necessary because you've got to pay for those bombers and those tanks and whatever else the federal government is actually supposed to be doing. But they also serve another purpose in that they can be unifying if we all have to pay them. They can be a common enemy that we like to complain about. More to the point, if we all have to pay taxes, every single one of us will have an incentive to make sure that our tax dollars are well spent. But when you take entire segments of the population, 40 to 60% of them, and say, you either have to pay nothing or you don't have to pay very much at all, then we excuse them from any incentive to make sure that it's being spent well. So we have to scrap the current Internal Revenue Code altogether and replace it with one of three models. I haven't yet settled on which model is best. I will say this, I will advocate on behalf of all three of them, unless or until we settle on one of them, one of the three, that Congress will actually adopt. I would be far more content with any of these than the current system. I haven't decided yet which one I like best. The first one would be a national flat income tax. Has the advantage of telling everybody, everybody's got to pay something. Now, the poor are going to pay less under the system because they make less. The rich are going to pay more under the system because they make more. But everybody pays something. Everybody pays in proportion to his or her income. Karl Marx, in his Communist Manifesto, said that one of the steps toward becoming a communist nation would be a highly progressive income tax system, because it's just a means of redistributing wealth. And that's what we've moved toward. We have a highly progressive income tax system. We've got to scrap that. So I like that one. It has its benefits, and I'd like to move in that direction. Second alternative, we move toward a national sales tax or a fair tax. The advantage to that is that instead of having potentially 300 million points of income, you have more like, I don't know, 50 to 100 million points of sale. It's easier to crack down on fraud, it's harder to cheat that system, and it encourages savings, whereas our current system doesn't encourage savings. I kind of like that. I think it would be easier to administer. You could phase out the Internal Revenue Service altogether and replace it with something far simpler. The third alternative is one I've been experimenting with. I like the idea. I haven't yet figured out whether I can definitely make it work. But we would abolish the 16th Amendment, abolish the Internal Revenue Code, and in abolishing the 16th Amendment, make sure that we give Congress the power to allow the states, should they choose, to collect their share of each year's federal budget. Let me explain what I mean. Congress each year would set its own budget. It would then decide how much each state's apportioned bill would be. So Utah has about 3 million people. There are about 300 million people in the United States. We have roughly 1% of the U.S. population. Under that system, they would say Utah is responsible for paying 1% of the federal budget. Under that system, they would say, okay, we can either have federal officers collect that and federal law decide how that is going to be paid under, some sort of Internal Revenue Code. Or, if the state chooses, the state could choose to collect that revenue on its own. A state like Utah, for example, which has a flat income tax alternative, could decide to do it that way. So I like that solution also. Anyway, I'd be interested in talking to you afterwards about which of those solutions you like best. I would push for all three of those at once. Any of them I can get to stick, I like. Any of those would be a vast improvement over the system we've got now, where nobody's ever read the entire Internal Revenue Code. It's too long. If you ever did read it, you would die. So, and we pay hundreds of billions of dollars in compliance costs for these awful regulations.
Tariffs.